Exactly. Awesome. So I'm gonna start recording this. I just realized that I didn't have a recording, even though I have a recording. Are you a recording? But all that being said, thank you all for being here. The topic today is really about removing those barriers to growth. And as I was getting ready for the topic today, it's that okay. So now you have time, as you need to follow up with someone. So you know that you need to follow up with some people, and you even have.
Mark, I think you lost audio.
You lost your audio.
Mark, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Nope.
I bet your headset died. Mm-mm.
Oh my goodness.
There you are. Can hear you now. Can you hear us?
Oh,
Can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, you're good
So,
now.
all right. Well, anyhow, yeah. Great. Technical difficulties always. So you have all these different people that you need to contact, and you want to communicate something to them, but what do you communicate? And so there's all of that time that sometimes gets devoted more to the strategy when you need that time carved out for follow-up. And yet you're trying to figure out some of those things. When you think about the barriers to growth, let's just, I'd love to see if there's anything in particular that pops up. Feel free to either add in the chat or feel free to share. Like when you think of barriers to growth, what are those barriers to growth as it relates to your CRM?
I mean, it would be nice to have things automated because it's very hard to scale and just have all of those things at my fingertips, the answers and all that. I mean, I'm working on that now, but
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so no automations, right? And a lot of manual.
A lot of manual.
Manual. Yep. Okay. Anything else that's popping up?
I agree with that. I think also just like we're using HubSpot to create drip campaigns, automated. So,
Yep.
Again, to Lisa's point, just less manual work.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. And
For
Christine?
me, I'm in Zoom Info, and we have a lot of issues with contact info being incorrect or phone numbers no longer in service. I mean, I reach out to tech companies, good example, and I reached out to a person who, as I was talking to him, I realized he was a gentleman in a nursing home. So it's bad, right? So that's an issue for us for sure.
Yeah. So unclean data, right?
Yeah, unclean data. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things that, Lisa and I know you and I were chatting about is to, and I've been regularly communicating this for years now. It's like messy data in, messy data out, clean data in, clean data out. So imagine you've got this automation, and automations are amazing, right? And we have to also be mindful of what are we doing for the automation first, because you can have, and I know that there's capabilities. I worked with a company a couple of years ago as they were just starting to integrate Zoom Info. And as we were talking, it's like, yeah, you can automatically have that drop into HubSpot, right? But now you have a contact in HubSpot that is like, okay, wait, this person is not qualified. How are you following up with them? Because you could easily do that, right? That could easily be automated. You could put them into a drip system. And now all of a sudden this guy is receiving this message in a way that's not even communicating what it is that really needs to be happening, right? He's not even your end consumer. And so that's really the idea of, yes, some of the times, and I put this in the description essentially as I was kind of writing this up, slowing down to go fast, right? You have to, and addition through subtraction, like all of those types of things are where we want to go. And the reason I sent out this, worksheet to all of you, and even just included a little bit of a video on why each of these categories is because when we start doing the manual work now, right? And we have our source, and I'm just going to go through these things. I'm not going to go through all of them here today, but just to kind of, for those, so there's source, there's persona, life cycle stage, lead status, and then filters. And when we look at those different categories, I'd invite each one of you to think about one of those categories whether it be source, where are you getting a lot of these leads? Whether that be online, whether that be from Zoom info, and just making sure that all of that information is really clear. Or the persona, articulating who the personas are, so that way what types of communications can be automated into a drip system later on. So it's kind of, again, taking that time right now to say, all right, I've got 1,000 names in my CRM. How would I categorize them in the different personas? And persona is, that fun name that as many marketers speak to. It's like knowing exactly who your audience is. Years ago, I heard that Jeff Bezos had or Amazon does this. And when they do focus groups, they'll actually bring in a cardboard cutout of their ideal persona when they're talking about different categories. And so, that is something for you to think about or consider. Life cycle stage is another one. So as you had a chance to look at the naming convention worksheet, was there one in particular that you wanted to focus on here today? Because again, I could go really deep into some specific categories, and I want to be mindful of the Q&As here of what will help serve you as you're relating to these different categories.
For us, I know the operations manager is usually the gatekeeper to a lot of tech companies. They're the ones that are usually tasked with the assignment of things such as looking for an MSP or a cybersecurity specialist.
Okay.
So that one's huge.
Okay. And so the operations specialist, and I love alliteration. I don't know if you have a specific name or anything for that persona. But since, that seems to be a key category for you, have you kind of named that persona, if you will?
Operation Olive.
Operation Olive?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, but basically, with all humor, that is one other thing I've noticed, in my experience at least, it is predominantly female. I've seen that in that role. So also just messaging geared perhaps a little more toward female audience, and then yeah, that's probably for us at least maybe 70% of the person who's doing the initial search or tasked with that initial interviews of different companies is the operation manager specialist.
Okay, fantastic. So think about that. I mean, 70%. So, I mean, even in some of the communication, you could be thinking about that to operations Olive, operator Olive. And, operator Olive, when you start putting some of these characteristics down, there's something that I like to refer as the persona power of 3. And inside of the persona power of 3, you've got operations Olive. There's characteristics, challenges, and goals. Characteristics, challenges, and goals. And so when you think about operator Olive, what is her characteristic? Are there certain things that she likes to do? Is she big into Instagram, right? Is she not? Is she on LinkedIn investigating things? And so like beginning to understand a little bit more of the characteristics will help you as you do want to eventually get to those automation steps and those sequences that HubSpot and all the different CRMs are capable of doing. How do you really break that down to capture and speak to operator Olive challenge, like her challenges, her characteristics, and then her goals? And so that starts to get a little bit more into the framing of the email communication, and then again, even the scripting of whatever it is that you may need to say. So is there something in particular that maybe stands out? And I'm not trying to put you too far on the spot, but does that kind of help in terms of like beginning to articulate maybe a little bit of how the communication could be towards operator Olive?
Yeah, that for sure helps. Having that, like you said, that key persona and what this person most likely is like and motivated by and fears, and yeah, kind of tapping into those in the messaging and some of the email campaigns we do is helpful. Yeah.
And I just even take that one step further, like even go online and stock images or whatever and grab an image of operator Olive and put that into any type of the communication or the documentation around that so that you could start to think, okay, when you're picturing Operator Olive, or when you go to different networking events, I know Jordan is very active in speaking at a lot of different events. You know, like, okay, is he speaking to an Operator Olive or is this other persona? So does Lisa, Rami, is there any other points or thoughts that you have in terms of this? Because again, this is a Q&A, and so like there's so much insight that we all have. So I want to make sure too, if there's something particular.
I'm curious if Operator Olive is the decision maker or a gatekeeper for you. And is she like, what is she going to be the one that invites you in, or does she need to like do you need to get past her to escalate to a decision maker?
Great question.
Is that for me? Sorry.
Yeah, for you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, yes. Here, I'll turn my video on. Sorry. Like I said, it's super bright, but usually what we find is Olive is the one that's tasked with the initial search. She basically gets all the intel, gets the pool of choices, and then yes, it usually goes to like a chief revenue officer, CFO, CEO sometimes. That's the person who's the final decision maker. But she gets to decide, hey, I like these people, I don't like these people, and make that pile of the possible choices to kind of bring up the funnel to them.
Yeah, so your goal, like the end of the funnel with her, is getting that meeting with the next person, I guess, right? Cool.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 3 specific, niches that we're going after and markets. And one thing really helped me, I just in my EO forum, one of the guys encouraged me to read Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And Mark's not his head knows what I'm talking about. So I did the 1-page brand script, and it really helped me to get into the mind of my customer, right? Because it's always like, how are we helping you win? How are we helping you become the hero? We're not the hero, we're the guide, right? So I did this for all 3 of our target markets, and it really just opened my eyes to, what are the challenges? How do I have empathy? How do I have authority? What's the messaging? How do I help them be successful? In the end, it's how you help them transform, right? From a frustrated, client to successful, happy client, right? And then what's that, 1 or 2 liner that's going to resonate with them, that's going to help them see that journey. And you're going to help them as the guide to help them get there. So I don't know. That was kind of eye-opening for me. And I think as I'm building my marketing and sales team, it was like, okay, like here's the message. It's different for each of these markets. There's some similarities, but it has to resonate across brands. So anyway, thought that was cool.
Beautiful. And yes, to yes and that, I remember, so that kind of just sparked something years ago. I was very avid attending to different this I Love Marketing meetups that Joe Polish hosted. Now he's in charge of this Genius Network. Well, one of the questions that he always asked is, who do you want to be a hero to? And it's not you being the hero, right? It's just like, how can you make the client heroic, right? Because that's really what you're up to, is helping them to do their job. Like, as I heard, each of you kind of introduce yourself, and in particular, I know that there was like a success piece that kind of resonated through each of your intros for who you're really looking to serve. Success is why you exist, right? For your customer, so that they can actually achieve the goals. And so like when you begin really articulating that and getting clear on, Operator Olive, all of those communications, it's less about you. And it's all about them and the things that they're looking to accomplish, the goals, the fears that she has. It's like, man, I'm trying to figure out all these things. There's so many things coming at you. And that just only is perpetuating more and more. And then all of a sudden, there's the reactive side, and sometimes I'm sure there's people that are coming to you that are very much like on the reactive side versus the proactive side, And so again, like, how do you help Operator Olive before it gets into that reactive side? So that's great. I want to open it up to a couple other questions, just in terms of, if we look at, this worksheet here, essentially, the source, persona, life cycle stage, or even the filters, so as you kind of get a little further, it's like, this is a little bit more simple, and then it starts to get a little bit more defined as we go down those different categories. But anything in particular that stands out, or that you'd like Q&A, removing barriers to growth for us today? Because I really want this, for this 30 minutes, I want to honor the time and give us an opportunity to have implementable steps. Like what can we implement right after?
I'm curious about the filters and how you look at those.
Sure.
How does that come into play?
Yeah, is that categories, different industries, or how are we filtering?
Yeah, I mean, so great question. I think that the perfect thing there is to understand when you start to have all of these things in place, like let's just say, so they all kind of build on each other. So let's just say for the filters, there's certain leads that you may have identified as people that you want to talk to. All right. So you had just put together some worksheet, or you have something that you wanted to share that you found that would really add value to someone. So let me give an example. There was a number of years ago, I was working at an agency, and I was specifically focused in the education vertical, and specifically around trade schools, and for one particular category. And I came across something where Mike Rowe was on Good Morning America talking about the power of trade schools. Okay, nothing to do with the agency that I was working with. That being said, though, because I had set up these steps, the sourcing, I mean, not necessarily as much as the sourcing, but the persona, and then the life cycle stage, and even the industry, I was able to say, hey, let me pull out all of these people that are in the trade school. And there were people that were regularly interacting. And I found out about 45 of them were regularly interacting. So I was able to filter out of the 980 some leads that I had in my HubSpot account. I was able to filter down to the 40 that were in trade schools that I wanted to send an email that said, hey, I just came across this video clip of Mike Rowe being on Good Morning America, thought, because of I knew a lot of the understandings of who that particular persona was all about, I knew that their admissions team sometimes had struggled with getting people over the fence of like, hey, do they want to go to a trade school? Are they going to go to a traditional university or whatever? So, this is something that I was able to filter down because all of these other steps had been more clearly defined. So that's essentially what I would say in terms of like, how do you use a filter? And that's, again, when you set up your HubSpot initially, and it's called different things in different categories, but HubSpot in particular is on filters. And so you can actually set up all these different tabs where you could just say trade schools, right? Or you could set up these different categories of operators. Here's operator Olive. And you could start to see how engaging she is based off of these different, for lack of a better way to say it, like Rami mentioned, categories. You could set up these different categories, and you could look into and see what is operator Olive doing, or whatever, whomever your persona is, to be able to make sure that when you're investing that time, to kind of go back to the beginning of this whole call of, okay, now you have time for follow-up. What are you following up with, and who are you following up with, and what are you following up with them on? Well, if I know operator Olive has this challenge, and I just found something on Good Morning America that can help operator Olive with something that is going to help her, that's going to serve her, right? And really help her succeed in some way, shape, or form. That's essentially how you could utilize some of the filters. Does that help?
A great example. Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Did you get some work from that? Was that successful, that campaign?
Great question. That was a very long-tailed sales cycle. And before, just in full transparency, I left before I had an opportunity to see some of those things. Like that particular example didn't lead to results. A lot of the other things, though, in terms of like the things that I had set up to build an ongoing sequence to different trade schools versus colleges and universities, that was very helpful for both the agency and then also because I was on commission for myself.
Nice.
Great question, though.
No, anytime you can add value.
Anytime
you can add value, if you have that category and there's something great that those people could see, those customers, potential customers, I think that's always a good thing to do rather than asking for business, right? So how am I helping you? How am I helping you be the hero? and giving more value for free, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just to kind of really underline that, we're been taught so much of fast transactions and instantaneous, right? And relationships are really where it's at,
right.
and so like, yeah, there's things that you can do. With everyone that I can see on the call here though today, it's you're looking to not just make a fast sale and it's going to turn into something today that's going to end up nothing tomorrow. You're looking at something that's longer term, that you want to like genuinely, like, I look forward to doing these live calls. I look forward to meeting with Lisa and her team. Like, it's like that's what's exciting, right? When you're working with people that you really care deeply about, that you want to serve. And so yeah, it might take more time, and it's not that like instant like gratification of like, yeah, this happened and then this happened, but over time eventually, right? And even
Right.
if not, you're still adding value. A friend of mine said, you always reap what you sow, you don't always reap where you sow.
Right.
And I think,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people, and again, I'm sure we could all attest to this. A lot of people that we've all added value to, that they may not have done something with us. However, this other thing came out of the blue and it's like, whoa, that came out of nowhere. How cool is that? So I think if we look at it from that perspective, it
Mhm.
gives us a different perspective. So I would love to, just to kind of wrap up, and make sure that we're here and ending on time. I want to honor everyone's time. So one thing is, this is essentially one of the areas that I really drill into and focus a lot more in. So if there's ever a follow up here, I'm happy to set up a call and go over that. So feel free to set up some other additional follow ups. And that's my, if you will, quote unquote, call to action. And I'd love to just kind of share one or two of you, if you'd like to share, like, what was a takeaway from today. So you showed up for 30 minutes. What's the thing that you can apply, and we're like, wow, this is something, this is a strategy that I slowed down to really begin for me to be able to speed up later. So takeaway.
Well, I have the next hour and 45 minutes set aside for me to work on my personas, concentrated time. So this was a great warm up for me to
Awesome.
get in that mindset and yeah, start thinking about different filters that I can put into play in those personas as well. So thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I think just getting the filters down, making sure our messaging is really targeted to that specific group, and really just leveraging HubSpot for that data. I think really cleaning it up, compressing it, getting rid of some of those old leads that we don't need to have anymore. So I think that's going to be a big, big step.
Yeah. Awesome. One thing about just that, and not to interrupt or jump in, just one thing to think about, you can actually have a cleanup list inside of HubSpot that you could filter out.
Hmm.
So
Awesome.
that can almost be an ongoing like way to keep organizing. So just
Cool.
another side. Looked like you were going to say something, maybe, Christine.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say for me, it was kind of similarly keeping things clean. So when I do get those undeliverable bounce backs going in and just, in the moment, deleting those contacts out of Zoom info so we keep things clean. We've had a lot of those, but trying to do that. And then you mentioned something, Mark, with all of the operator, you said to keep in mind three things. You said fears, opportunities. Am
Oh,
I getting
well,
it three?
well, there were a couple things. So I said the persona is challenges,
Challenges. Yeah.
characteristics, and goals.
Okay.
That's
Yes.
right.
And so keep,
I
yes.
call it persona
And
power of three.
that
So,
was,
yeah.
yes, that was a very like strong point in my mind. Keeping that in mind when I write for that audience, really making sure that messaging is in there. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just
Awesome.
sidebar, Christine, we use Zoom Info. I haven't had a ton of success
cool.
getting deals from it, but it's been,
Yeah,
as far as like intel, it's been huge. Like I can see
totally.
revenue, I can see who's who. Like that's been really
Mhm.
good for like sales meetings and marketing. So I don't know.
Thank you
I've
for
kept
saying
it.
that. I have the same feelings. Like I feel like it's useful in that sense, but Yeah, I mean, like that day I called the guy in the nursing home. I was like, okay, this is this is a little much here.
It's like, I'm dying. I can't help you. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh gosh.
Wow.
So thank you for saying that, Rami. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. That concludes our call. Are we doing it again next month? First Thursday of every month. So 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 12 o'clock Eastern. And yeah, hope to see you there.
Thanks, everybody.
for
Talk
Awesome.
soon.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
joining.
Thank you, everyone.
I know.